Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey, Wheels, and Wounds. As always, I'm Shawn, 9-year Air Force vet.
And I'm Steve, 22-year United States Army veteran.
And this week's episode is going to be our Memorial Day special. It means a lot to us. Before we get into what Memorial Day is, what it means to us, and what we're doing for this week's episode, Steve's got our featured whiskey of the week.
Yeah, featured whiskey is Sergeant Valor. It's from Hawk Whiskey out of North Carolina. It's Brad Haling Whiskey Company. Brad is a retired sergeant major. He is also he was a Delta Force sniper. He participated um, in Mogadishu. And the whiskey is a little bit about the whiskey. It's 93 proof. Like I said, it's Brad Haling Whiskey Company and Hawk, and it's called Sergeant Valor. They have a bourbon, they have a rye. They also have 106 proof called Gratitude. And Brad Haling, again, retired sergeant major. He was on Super 6-2 during operations in Mogadishu, one of 4 Black Hawks that got hit with RPGs that day. Super 6-2 is the bird that put Shugart and Gordon on the deck to provide support for Chief Durant when his bird went down, which ties in. So this bottle ties into, Shugart and Gordon are 2 Medal of Honor recipients from Mogadishu. Brad Haling was injured in the RPG attack, but the pilot of Super 6-2 was able to land safely, and then went on to get into another bird and fly back out over the city. So Sergeant Valor is today's featured whiskey.
Sounds good. So Memorial Day. I know last year when we talked about it, last season we talked about, why your average veteran feels uncomfortable when someone thanks them for their service on Memorial Day, and how that would be more attuned to Veterans Day. But by the same token, we don't shit on the general public for trying to show appreciation for the sacrifices that individuals make.
Right.
And Memorial Day is not about the ones that came home. Memorial Day is about the ones that never made it back, or
Yep.
never made it back alive.
Right. That gave the final full measure. It's a lot of warriors have these ideas of grandeur of losing their lives in combat. They think it's the most I don't know, honorable the most honorable thing to do.
Lieutenant Dan
The
from Forrest
Lieutenant Dan.
Gump.
Yep. Um and there's some truth to that. I think there's some substance to that. I mean, no one um
Well, if you go back through history, that's something that's ingrained in warrior culture. Vikings going to Valhalla, it's just that's warrior culture. In the military builds on that history of warrior culture, especially in the combat arms arena.
right. Yeah. And you know, it's a solemn day. We do a ride every year, and we put a few hours out on the road because we can, and we can because we're afforded the opportunity to do what we love to do because of those who came before us, who laid their lives, and who you know, protects the thread of freedom that this country is woven together with.
Well, and like you say a lot when we do the escorts, it's the least we could do.
The absolute, yes,
The
the
least
absolute least we can do
is go out and celebrate um their sacrifice and what it has afforded those around them. And also they didn't get to live their life afterwards. So what kind of person would we be to not live our life when they sacrificed for us to live our
I
lives?
mean, you think of James Morrow, second lieutenant, bomber pilot, World War II. They take off from Libya on a mission he never returns home to until last Friday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Last Friday.
And his mother and his siblings wrote the DOD and politicians for years trying to get him brought home. And when he finally came home, none of them were left alive to
Yeah.
see it.
And that's, you know, that is the fabric of never forgotten. You know, you are never forgotten. Um, like we talked about last week, um, as the motto of the POWMIA. And, you know, it took DNA from his grandchildren to identify him. That's amazing. That's generations of storytelling from his mother to siblings to grandchildren to nieces and nephews. That's storytelling, keeping James alive, his memory alive. So when, you know, it comes out that, all right, we're recovering remains in Europe. We have technology now to extract DNA from their bones, and we can match them to their ancestors, um, or to their relatives who are living today. And you know, it takes family not giving up on the story of James. He lived 21 years. You know what I mean? He lived 21 years, and
It took 4 times as long to come home.
yeah, and I'm so I was so proud to be part of.
I was honored and humbled at the
Yeah,
same time.
so proud to be part of the escort team, um, to bring him home. And we get a chance to do it again. Like in a week's time, two veterans from World War II who have been missing are coming home. You know, um, uh,
This
say
week,
say what you want about our government. You know what I mean? Um, but we have programs in place to uh bring these guys home, and it's amazing.
they just don't throw the remains in a box and forget about them.
Right. um and you know, it goes back to, you know, um countries having the respect. I don't know your name, but you know, I'm gonna honor your sacrifice, and I'm gonna bury you in a marked grave or unmarked grave, if you will, with just a number and letter to signify you're different than the one next to you. You know what I mean? And you know, then again, the American government petitioning to go to these different countries and um, insist that we exhume some bodies to get some families some peace.
Yeah, I mean they're using all kinds of modern forensic technology. They're using it's the same type of techniques that archaeologists use to
Yeah,
dig up, fossils and
yeah,
things like that. Like it's an elaborate team that goes around the world every year, looking for remains, and then a whole nother team that sits back in Hawaii
Yep.
just checking DNA
Yeah.
profiles.
Yep.
All these places where you've uploaded a DNA profile, they hit them until they find something that's even close to a familial match, and then they start digging down the rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
then
It's
you get the phone call that the family got last year. Hey, we think we found him.
yeah. And then they do extensive, more extensive tests to confirm.
Hmm.
So now, without a shadow of a doubt, this is your relative.
And to also make sure that when they dig up these graves, a lot of times there were multiple guys in them, that they get all of the remains that pertain to your loved one,
Yeah.
so that they come home as complete as they can make him.
Yeah. So I mean, um, nothing. And then we get a chance. We get a chance this weekend, Saturday. Um, the ladies, guys, in their final resting spots, so they can rest eternally easy, knowing that a country that they gave their lives for did not forget them. And yes, it took, you know, 8 decades, but they're home.
Yep.
And again, there's no, if there's no greater measure of a man to give his life for one's country, then there's no greater honor to, be present when that person who sacrificed his his entire lifetime for the greater good gets laid to rest. And we'll be there for that. So
And we're doing it again Thursday
yeah, we're going.
for a tail gunner.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, again, they're veterans. So I mean, it's cool to read the backstories, read where they're from, and that. But they're veterans from the state of Ohio. Um, that's our bond. That's the bond I have with them, and that's what draws me to um, do my part. And granted, they don't know I'm there. You know what I mean? But I know. You know what
And
I
the
mean?
family
And the
knows.
family knows. And a family member coming up and expressing their gratitude. That's it.
Yeah,
That's you know what I mean? Like that's all it takes for me.
it's the least we could do.
It's the fucking least. You know what I mean?
We get to
Oh,
escort, and we get to ride our
it
motorcycles.
and the pushback is well, the weather. It don't matter. It don't matter. It don't matter.
Yeah, it could be a monsoon.
It don't matter.
He he
If the
does.
weather's so bad, I'm pretty sure the funeral home would alter the plans. Hey, we're going to postpone, right? If that ain't the case, I'm riding.
Yeah,
I'm riding.
we owe it.
And this this is something I'm passionate about. So, um, you know, I just I got to do it.
Yeah.
So, in encompassing in keeping with this year's theme, if you will, for Memorial Day is for us to recognize 6 of this nation's um, recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is this nation's highest award given to military personnel.
And
Uh,
because it's Memorial Day, we chose to choose 6 that were awarded posthumously.
Posthumously, yes. So they died um, while the
In their respective theater of
in
operations.
their yes in the act of their heroism.
Yes.
Um, and part of the criteria for the Medal of Honor is not only do you have to put yourself in harm's way, make a decision that puts yourself in grave danger, but you're also making the decision to put yourself um, at that point other than your buddies. So not only are you knowingly putting yourself in grave danger, you are doing so to protect, um, a teammate, a squad member, etc. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah,
So the Medal of Honor's been around since the Civil War.
yep, and it's gone through several different changes, and yeah, the most Medal of Honors were distributed during the Civil War, um, World War II being next. There's been over 3,000 Medal of Honors given. Um, there's been over, um, and I want to say 16 dual recipients.
The last 5 were in World War One,
Yeah, dual recipients,
because
and
after that they changed the criteria that you couldn't get it more than once.
yeah, and we'll talk about a guy today who was in that conversation of receiving 2 Medal of Honors, and yeah, the youngest Medal of Honor recipient, young man William Willie Johnson. Um, his act of heroism happened to be on his birthday, uh, June 5th, 1862, and his birthday was June 5th, 1850, which would make him 12 years old. Um, yeah, so he was the youngest recipient of the Medal of Honor. And there's been each branch has had a Medal of Honor recipient, excluding the Space Force because they're relatively new. Coast Guard has had one as well, and most demographics, um, that we think about in this country, African Americans are representative, um, Asian Americans are represented, um, American Indian is represented, Jewish American is represented. Um, so most of the demographics out there are represented, and Army has the most recipients, but like we've said in many other cases, they're the oldest, and they're also the largest military service. So that I'm sure that has something to do with that. And so today we're gonna honor 6, um, one from each branch, and we'll also one from the major
Yeah,
conflicts
the 6 major conflicts.
in the last 100 or so years.
Yeah, World War One, World War Two, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq.
Yeah,
That's not to say that the other conflicts didn't warrant. We had to pick a starting point, and
right.
so we
And
picked the
and
6
and like we
major.
mentioned, and also Somalia um, was in there, and that's why we picked Sergeant Valor, because of the correlation with Shugart and Gordon um, receiving Medal of Honor. So it just made sense.
Yep.
Mm.
So I get to start us off with World War One, and that would be Frank Luke Jr. He was born May 19th, 1897, in Phoenix, Arizona, when it was a territory. and died September 29th, 1918, at the age of 21 in Mervaux, France. He's buried in the Meuse Argonne American Cemetery and Memorial. He was in the United States Army. He was in the Air Service. Luke Air Force Base is named in his honor. He was a bit of an arrogant pilot, but in World War One, you had to be a bit arrogant and crazy to fly a wooden and fabric biplane in the air missions over there. Because of his arrogance and occasional tendencies to fly alone and disobey orders, Luke was disliked by some of his peers and superiors. But the 27th was under standing orders to destroy German observation balloons. Because of this, Luke, along with his close friend Lieutenant Joseph Frank Wayner, continually volunteered to attack these important targets, although they were heavily defended by anti-aircraft guns on the ground. The two pilots began a string of victories together, with Luke attacking the balloons and Wayner flying protective cover. Wayner was killed in action on September 18th by George von Hantelmann in a dogfight with a Fokker D-7, which were attacking Luke. Luke then shot down two balloons and a Halberstadt. The last credit enabled Luke to achieve his 13th official kill. Between September 12th and 29th, Luke was credited with shooting down 14 German balloons and 4 airplanes. Luke achieved these 18 victories during just 10 sorties in 8 days, a feat unsurpassed by any pilot in World War I. So observation balloons were kind of the big thing during World War I. And so his nickname was the Arizona Balloon Buster because he could take them out. So his Medal of Honor citation reads, there it is. After having previously destroyed a number of enemy aircraft within 17 days, he voluntarily started on a patrol after German observation balloons. Though pursued by 8 German planes which were protecting the enemy balloon line, he unhesitatingly attacked and shot down in flames 3 German balloons, being himself under heavy fire from ground batteries and the hostile planes. Severely wounded, he descended to within 50 meters of the ground and, flying at this low altitude near the town of Mervaux, opened fire upon enemy troops, killing 6 and wounding as many more. Forced to make a landing and surrounded on all sides by the enemy who called upon him to surrender, he drew his automatic pistol and defended himself gallantly until he fell dead from a wound in the chest. So, you know, he was a bit of a, when I was talking to Sarge about it the other night, he's a bit of a gangster. Because he just my job's to take out balloons. I'm going to take out balloons until you force me to not do it anymore. He was second only to Eddie Rickenbacker as far as confirmed kills by U.S. military pilots. There were some other U.S. pilots that were flying with the British Air Force and things like that that had some more. But of his 18 kills that he's confirmed with, 17 of them were destroyed. Where with Rickenbacker, they only confirmed 11 destroyed right off the bat of his 26 kills. And to finish it up, Eddie Rickenbacker said of Luke, he was the most daring aviator and greatest fighter pilot of the entire war. His life is one of the brightest glories of our air service. He went on a rampage and shot down 14 enemy aircraft, including 10 balloons in 8 days. No other ace, even the dreaded Richthofen, had ever come close to that. And that would be the Red Baron. So, I mean, when the best ace for the U.S. calls you a badass, I think that would attest to just how badass you actually were.
Yeah, absolutely. Much respect. Much respect. I'm going to talk about John Robert Fox, first lieutenant. He was born May 18th, 1915, Cincinnati. He died December 26th, 1944, in Italy. Lieutenant Fox, he was attached to the 598th Field Artillery Battalion, Cannon Company, 366th Infantry, 92nd Infantry Division. The 92nd Infantry Division was the Buffalo Soldiers. the personal connection I have with Lieutenant Fox is down at Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, where I was stationed. I was in the 317th Engineer Battalion. We were called the Buffaloes. And our building was named after Lieutenant Fox. And his picture was displayed in our battalion headquarters for as long as I can remember. You know, I was there in 98, and then it disbanded in 2003. And Lieutenant Fox's picture was there. So the conflict is World War II, and 26 December 1944 in the Serciano River Valley in Italy. Lieutenant Fox was a member of Cannon Company, 366th Infantry, 92nd Infantry Division, acting as a forward observer while attached to the 598th Field Artillery Battalion. Christmas Day was spent in positions he had been occupied for some weeks. During Christmas night, there was a gradual influx in enemy soldiers in civilian clothes, and by the morning, the town was largely in enemy hands. An organized attack by uniformed German formation was launched around 0400 hours, 26 December 1944. Reports were received that the area was being heavily shelled by everything the Germans had. And although most of the U.S. infantry forces withdrew from the town, Lieutenant Fox and members of his observer party remained behind. On the second floor of a house directing defensive fires, Lieutenant Fox reported at 0800 hours that the Germans were in the streets and attacking in strength. He called for artillery fire, increasingly close to his position. He told his battalion commander that was just where I wanted, bring it in 60 yards. His commander protested that the heavy barrage was in his area and the bombardment would be too close. Lieutenant Fox gave his adjustment, requesting that the barrage be fired. The distance was cut in half. The Germans continued to press forward in large numbers, surrounding his position. Lieutenant Fox again called for artillery fire, with the commander protesting again, stating, Fox, this will be on you. The last communication from Lieutenant Fox was, fire it. There's more of them than there are of us. Give them hell. The bodies of Lieutenant Fox and his party were found in the vicinity of his position when his position was taken. The actions by Lieutenant Fox, at the cost of his own life, inflicted heavy casualties and death of approximately 100 German soldiers. Uh, and
It's heavy knowing you're signing your own death wish or your own death warrant. You know what I mean?
it's
Like,
yeah, in those moments where, you know, especially in World War II, today you call for fire, you know what I mean, and they can hit a gnat's ass from fucking 20 miles away. Then you know you as a forward observer is relying on the ability of an artilleryman to get the, you know, am I sending you the right coordinates? Are you receiving the right coordinates? Are you relaying the right coordinates? And are they, you know,
yeah, it's not like forward observers now where you laser a
yeah,
target and
right.
laser guided. You know,
Yeah,
it's
you're you know, it's called successful bracketing. You know, you're this is where I think they are. We fire shots. All right, I'm gonna add so much, drop so much. Put meals involved. But yeah, it's
To know that your position was going to be overrun regardless.
yeah, and right, your position was going to be overrun, but you took measures to stop the advancement of the Germans. That's pretty powerful. Yeah.
And while he was awarded the Medal of Honor, it goes to his party as well, knowing what was coming.
Right.
You know what
I
I mean?
mean, it,
As the
it
commander of the party, and it was ultimately his decision, but those guys knew what was coming as well, and they stood there and fought with him,
right,
and knew when he said fire it that what was coming down the pipe.
right, and I'm sure they had the same sentiment.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
that's one thing you'll find with the guys that we're reading about. They all pretty much have the same sentiment. Like who I'll be doing next is Louis J. Sebille. He was a bomber pilot in Korea with the United States Air Force. He was born November 21, 1915, in Harbor Beach, Michigan. He died August 5th, 1950, um, near Hamshang, Uip, in the Pusan perimeter of Korea. He was a ranger, or a major. Sorry, I can't talk straight. Um, he commanded the 67th Fighter Bomber Squadron at the outbreak of the Korean War, flying P-51 Mustangs in close air support and airstrike missions. On August 5th, 1950, he attacked a North Korean armored column advancing on the United Nations military units. Though his aircraft was heavily damaged and he was wounded during the first pass on the column, he turned his plane around and deliberately crashed into the convoy at the cost of his life. So, this dude was a pilot during World War II, enlisted right after Pearl Harbor, as many did. Um, in the Korean War, he was still in his his Medal of Honor action. At the beginning of the Battle of the Pusan Perimeter, the night of August 4th, North Korean troops established a bridgehead across the Naktong River and were using it to advance across the river and attack Taegu, where the UN's 8th United States Army was headquartered in defense of the perimeter. On August 5th, a T 6 Mosquito forward air controller spotted a North Korea column advancing through the village of Hamchang-up. Sebille was ordered to lead a flight of 3 F-51s on an airstrike against the North Korean troops advancing there. Sebille flew an F-51 tail number 4474-394, loaded with two 500-pound bombs, 6 rockets, and 6 M2 Browning 50 caliber machine guns. He and his wingman, Captain Martin Johnson and Lieutenant Charles Morehouse, approached the village at an altitude of 5,000 feet and spotted a North Korean armored column crossing the river in a shallow area. Sebille positioned himself for a medium angle dive bomb run, planning to drop both of his bombs on his first attack. Diving, he held steady until about 2,500 feet when he spotted a target column of trucks, artillery guns, armored cars led by a North Korean armored personnel carrier. He hit the bomb release button on his control stick and then made a sharp pull up to the left to stay away from his bomb blast. However, only one of his bombs had released, and the 500 pounds of unbalanced weight under his left wing may have contributed to his near miss on the first run. North Korean flak struck his F 51 as he turned to make a second run, heavily damaging the aircraft, and it began trailing smoke and glycol coolant. Sebille had intended to release his second bomb, but he radioed Johnson that he had been hit and injured, probably fatally. Johnson radioed back Sebille could try to head for a U.S. emergency landing strip in Taegu, a short distance away, but Sebille responded with his last known words: "No, I'll never make it. I'm going back and I'm going to get that bastard." He dove straight toward the APC that was his target. He fired 6 rockets in salvo, but instead of pulling up to the regular 2,000 feet, he deliberately continued to dive his airplane and the remaining bomb straight into the target, firing his 6 machine guns. His plane sustained even heavier damage, and he crashed into the North Korean convoy, destroying a large contingent of North Korean ground troops and vehicles, though being killed instantly himself. Upon hearing the reports of Sebille's death, commanders in Korea did not think highly of Sebille's act, liking it to a kamikaze action. In spite of reluctance, Lieutenant Donald Bolt, the squadron's assistant awards officer, forwarded a citation of the event to Washington, D.C., where Sebille would be evaluated for the Medal of Honor. Shortly after the incident, both Bolt and Sebille's second in command, Captain Robert Howe, were killed in separate combat engagements. A short obituary for Sebille appeared in the Time magazine after his death. The United States Air Force Academy also created a memorial to Sebille in Harmon Hall, the Academy's administration building. So here's what his citation says. Rank and organization: Major, U.S. Air Force, 67 Fighter Bomber Squadron, 18th Fighter Bomber Group, 5th Air Force. Place and date: near Hangcheng, Korea, August 5th, 1950. Entered service at Chicago, Illinois. Born November 21st, 1915, Harbor Beach, Michigan. Citation: Major Sebille distinguished himself by conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. During an attack on a camouflaged area containing a concentration of enemy troops, artillery, and armored vehicles, Major Sebille's F-51 aircraft was severely damaged by anti-aircraft fire. Although fully cognizant of the short period he could remain airborne, he deliberately ignored the possibility of survival by abandoning the aircraft or by crash landing, and continued his attack against the enemy forces, threatening the security of friendly ground troops. In his determination to inflict maximum damage upon the enemy, Major Sebille again exposed himself to the intense fire of enemy gun batteries and dived on the target to his death. The superior leadership, daring, and selfless devotion to duty which he displayed in the execution of an extremely dangerous mission. Oh, crap. Did I lose that last page? I did. Summon a bitch. I didn't get to finish the thing. Well, that just chaps my ass a little bit. Anyways, Major Sebille, that was gangster. But again, last words like the lieutenant. This son bitch is going down.
Yeah. And then you make a business decision. You know what I mean? Like you can try to land it um in a rice paddy somewhere,
Yep.
and then escape, evade, or um
That armored convoy was heading right for that headquarters.
yeah,
They weren't going after he hit them.
yeah. Moving on to the Vietnam War, United States Navy Corpsman, third class, Wayne Maurice uh Caron, headquarters and service company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division. He was born November 2nd, 1946, in Middleborough, Plymouth County, Massachusetts. He died July 28th, 1968, Republic of Vietnam, in the Quang Nam province. During combat actions against enemy forces while on a sweep through an open rice field, HC-3 Caron unit started receiving enemy fire from small arms. Upon seeing 2 Marines casualties fall, he immediately ran forward to render first aid, but found they were dead. At the time, the platoon was taken under intense small arm and automatic weapon fire, sustaining additional casualties as he moved to aid of his wounded comrades. Corpsman Caron was hit in his arm by enemy fire. Although knocked to the ground, he regained his feet and continued to the injured Marines. He rendered medical assistance to the first Marine he reached, who was gravely wounded, and undoubtedly was instrumental in saving that man's life. AC-3 Caron then ran towards a second wounded Marine, but was again hit by enemy fire. at this time in his leg. Nonetheless, he crawled the remaining distance and provided medical aid for his severely wounded man. HC3 Caron started to make his way to yet another injured comrade when he was again struck by enemy small arms fire. Courageously and with unbelievable determination, HC3 Caron continued his attempt to reach the 3rd Marine until he was killed by an enemy rocket round. So, um, many combat armed soldiers have uh, great respect for their medics.
Yes.
And they are held, when you are a combat medic and you receive the moniker doc, it's a badge of honor for them guys. And um and that when stuff goes bad, that that person there is your first line of survival, right? I mean, we always say, if you get injured, wounded in war, you self aid, then buddy aid, then the medic, and then we get you to each tier level medical facility. And the combat medic, when it was interjected into platoons, and they were given, in each subsequent conflict since they were introduced, battlefield deaths went down. You were not dying from untreated wounds that needed tourniquets, or things of that nature. So they raised the level of self aid, right? Like each individual was getting smarter about self aid. We were getting smarter about buddy aid, and then medics were getting more responsibilities. They wasn't just giving you Motrin and telling you drink water. You know what I mean?
Water's your buddy.
Right. I mean, the evolution of now with technology and that stuff, the surviving the battlefield is greater now than it's ever been.
Well, a good example of that is Brad Holling.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a lesson learned that they got, and that's when the military developed the the black tourniquets that we ended
Yeah,
up having to carry with us.
in your IFAC. Yeah,
Yeah,
because he used a belt from the crew chief from the Black Hawk, and a screwdriver,
and a big ass screwdriver that was on the
to
helicopter.
hold a tourniquet on his leg. So yeah, I mean,
The doc that took care of him said, that was one of their lessons learned, was we need to develop something so that these guys can tourniquet themselves.
and that's 93.
Yeah,
That's 93. You know what I mean? So yeah, so and I bet if you look, there's a lot of docs that are recipients of, if not the Medal of Honor, of their services highest award.
well, the man I'm about to talk about, John Chapman, in Afghanistan, during that battle, there was a PJ. Um, my familiarity with this PJ is when I was in Bagram, Afghanistan. The Air Force camp was at the base of the tower. It was called Camp Cunningham. It was named after Jason Cunningham, senior airman. He's PJ. First combat mission ended up being the Roberts Ridge battle. Um, He was running around taking care of guys, took some rounds under his or his body armor, but they couldn't. If they could have got somebody into him, he would have survived. But because the LZ was too hot, so for the next 7 hours, I think he slowly bled out and died. But the whole time he was doing it, he was helping guys and teaching other guys how to help them because he knew his life force was slowly draining
Mm,
away. And he was awarded the Air Force Cross. But again, it's a doc doing what docs do. You
it
know,
is most certainly
the PJ motto is so that others may live, and that's what all combat medics do.
right.
So, in the Afghanistan conflict, I'm going to talk about John Allen Chapman. At the time of his citation, he was a tech sergeant. He was posthumously awarded promotion to master sergeant. Originally, he was given the Air Force Cross, but it was upgraded to the Medal of Honor. John Chapman was born July 14th, 1965, in Springfield, Massachusetts. He grew up in Connecticut. He originally enlisted in the Air Force in 1985 as an information systems operator. And he quickly learned that sedentary office work was not his bag. Um, so he, in 1990, he cross trained into being a combat controller. Now, the Air Force only has two types of jobs that fall under the Special Forces umbrella, and that's the PJ, pararescue, and the combat controller. Combat controllers are attached to Navy SEAL teams and things like that, and their whole job is to communicate between that guy that team on the ground and the AWACS and the planes and calling in air support and things like that. So, from 1990 to 2002, that's what he did, and he was, from all accounts, he was very good at his job. Um, so on March 4th, 2002, Chapman and members of the U.S. Navy SEALs took part in Operation Anaconda. A Boeing CH-47 Chinook came under enemy fire, causing Navy SEAL Neil C. Roberts to fall. The helicopter landed 4.5 miles away from where Roberts was killed. Once on the ground, Chapman provided directions to another helicopter to pick them up. He and the team volunteered to rescue Roberts from the enemy stronghold. Upon returning to recover Roberts, the team come under fire from three directions. Chapman charged forward, killing two enemy soldiers and advancing towards a defensive fighting position. From minimal personal cover, and he received multiple wounds. His engagement and destruction of the first enemy position and advancement to the second enabled his team to move to cover and break enemy contact. He is credited with saving the lives of the entire rescue team. Um, there's some, we've talked before about um, how there's some murkiness in the special operations community about certain individuals. And unfortunately, John Chapman is one of those where there is some reports that are less than stellar for this scenario. I'm not going to get into those because this is about what he did
Mm-hmm.
and not the subsequent actions of other individuals. So, first, he got his Air Force Cross. Uh, The President of the United States of America, authorized by Title 10, Section 8742, awards the Air Force Cross to Tech Sergeant John Chapman for extraordinary heroism and military operation against an armed enemy of the United States as a 24th Special Tactics Squadron combat controller in the vicinity of Gardez in the eastern highlands of Afghanistan. On March 4th, 2002, on this date, during his helicopter insertion for reconnaissance and time sensitive targeting close air support mission, Sergeant Chapman's aircraft came under heavy machine gun fire and received a direct hit from a rocket propelled grenade, which caused a United States Navy Sea Air Land team member to fall from the aircraft. Though heavily damaged, the aircraft egressed the area and made an emergency landing 7 kilometers away. Once on the ground, Sergeant Chapman established communication with an AC 130 gunship to ensure the area was secure while providing close air support coverage for the entire team. He then directed the gunship to begin search for the missing team member. He requested coordinated and controlled the helicopter that extracted the stranded team and aircrew members. These actions limited the exposure of the aircrew and team to hostile fire. Without regard for his own life, Sergeant Chapman volunteered to rescue his missing team member from an enemy stronghold. Shortly after insertion, the team made contact with the enemy. Sergeant Chapman engaged and killed 2 enemy personnel. He continued to advance, reaching the enemy position, then engaged a second enemy position, a dug-in machine gun nest. At this time, the rescue team come under effective enemy fire from 3 directions. From close range, he exchanged fire with the enemy from minimum personal cover until he succumbed to multiple wounds. His engagement and destruction of the first enemy position and advancement on the second position enabled his team to move to cover and break enemy contact. In his own words, his Navy Sea Air Land team leader credits Sergeant Chapman unequivocally with saving the lives of the entire rescue team. Through his extraordinary heroism, superb airmanship, aggressiveness in the face of the enemy, and the dedication to service of his country, Sergeant Chapman reflects the highest credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. 14 years later, in 2016, the then Air Force Chief of Staff, um, or the Air Force Secretary, um, pushed for his Air Force Cross to be upgraded to a Medal of Honor. And this is where things get a little hairy. Um, but what they were able to do, and it's the first time it's ever been documented, they were able to use the drone footage from the Predator and also the camera footage from the C-130, the AC-130, and they were able to assign each member on the ground a pixel signature, and it enabled the computer programs to use those pixel signatures through that video footage to track the movements of every participant in the battle. And through doing that, they were able to track Chapman as he came out of the helicopter, as he advanced on his 2 positions. Um, and then at the time in 2002, the the chief, who was the team lead, um, when they were pulling out, he wrongfully assumed, through certain things, that Chapman was dead. And what they were able to see through tracking that video footage is after they pulled away, there was a helicopter coming in with the Rangers on it, which was the QRF.
Mm-hmm.
As that helicopter was coming in and the enemy was engaging that helicopter, Chapman, which they believe regained consciousness, engaged the enemy again while mortally wounded, even in hand-to-hand combat before he was finally killed. Um, so because of what that video footage showed, they upgraded it to the Medal of Honor, and the citation reads as follows. Technical Sergeant John A. Chapman distinguished himself by extraordinary heroism as an Air Force Special Tactics combat controller attached to a Navy Sea Air Land team conducting reconnaissance operations in Takur Ghar, Afghanistan. On March 4th, 2002, during insertion, the team's helicopter was ambushed, causing a teammate to fall into an entrenched group of enemy combatants below. Sergeant Chapman and the team voluntarily reinserted onto the snow-capped mountain into the heart of a known enemy stronghold to rescue one of their own. Without regard for his own safety, Sergeant Chapman immediately engaged, moving in the direction of the closest enemy position despite coming under heavy fire from multiple directions. He fearlessly charged an enemy bunker up a steep incline in thigh-deep snow and into hostile fire, directly engaging the enemy. Upon reaching the bunker, Sergeant Chapman assaulted and cleared the position, killing all enemy occupants. With complete disregard for his own life, Sergeant Chapman deliberately moved from cover only 12 meters from the enemy and exposed himself once again to attack a second bunker, from which an emplaced machine gun was firing on his team. During this assault from an exposed position directly in the line of intense fire, Sergeant Chapman was struck and injured by enemy fire. Despite severe mortal wounds, he continued to fight relentlessly, sustaining a violent engagement with multiple enemy personnel before making the ultimate sacrifice. By his heroic actions and extraordinary valor, sacrificing his life for the lives of his teammates, Technical Sergeant Chapman upheld the highest tradition of military service and reflected great credit upon himself in the United States Air Force. Even after he was thought to be dead and was left, he knew that there was another helicopter coming in, and that QRF was coming in to rescue everybody that he was with, and he wasn't going to let the enemy engage them freely.
Right.
Even though he knew he was being left behind, he still fought them with everything he had, what weapon he had, till it got to the point where he had to engage in hand-to-hand combat before finally succumbing to his wounds. I mean, that's just remarkable. And he was the first Air Force member to be awarded the Medal of Honor since the Vietnam War.
Yeah. And, you know, if you ever watch the ISR feed and you like, you know, the citation says in thigh deep snow on an incline, you know, when you watch the ISR feed and it looks like, you know, basically just little black dots because it's, you know, the black is from the heat signature of your body. And when the remaining team leaves the first um position, and you know, going up to the position, it was, them dots were very steady moving. On the way back, you can, they moved rapidly, and you can tell the slope that they were fighting in, up on Tucker Gar, excuse me.
Which was renamed Roberts Ridge in honor of the SEAL who lost his life
Right,
first.
right, and um, yeah, and you know, there was heroism. You know, the Roberts fell from the Chinook due to the Chinook taking RPG fire. You know, the heroism in just that pilot, you know, landing the bird, a crew chief in the back of that bird, hand pouring in hydraulic fluid so that the pilot can regain the stick to safely land that thing.
We had 5 helicopters shot down in that conflict,
Yeah,
or that battle.
right. Um, so you know, things of that nature. You know, the and then the pathology. You know, we just talked about technology and how advanced the corpsmen are. You know what I mean? Um, when 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 they got John Chapman off that hill, and the medical examiners was able to examine his body, they determined the first 2 rounds he took were mortal wounds. Well, how do you know that? Because his body started healing itself. You know what I mean? Like when something punctures your skin will try to, and they can tell, you know, these wounds happen first, these wounds happens, you know what I mean, next. And so he was mortally wounded the night prior, you know, and you know, he went radio silent there for a while. Um, and like you said, the next morning, a observer controller, Air Force observer controller, about 4 clicks away, heard Chapman radioing uh, the planes, like you said, when that Ranger Chinook came in to drop, but he was unable to receive messages, but he was transmitting messages. So that, you know, that tells you right there that you know, even that next morning, even being by himself in the cold for as long as he was, and you know, every excuse to quit, every excuse to quit, and you know, his final measure is to make sure he was still doing his job so that birds could land, and um
And like Lieutenant Fox and Major Sebille, um, I'm not quitting. You're going to take me out
right,
to get me to stop. And until you do that, you're going to suffer my wrath.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't think a citation, being in the military for, as long as we have been, everybody knows that the award system is broken. Um, you know, blanket awards for combat service, and normally it's based on your rank. If you're if you're a lower enlisted guy, you're getting an RCOM. If you're a higher enlisted guy that was a platoon sergeant, first sergeant, or sergeant major, you're going to get a Bronze Star. Um, the and then the same way with the lieutenants and so on. So, you know, um, the award system, at least in the United States Army, is broken. Um, but even writing it up, what I mean, it's it's a third. Normally, it's like a third party, right? Like it's like like you said, it was the award lieutenant writing up the citation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, now granted, in order to get the Medal of Honor, you have to have eyewitness
And
statements.
and that was the thing about Chapman's. It was the first one they said that was awarded without eyewitness statements because they had irrefutable video evidence.
Right. And well, they had statements.
Right, but
They were just not signed. But again, we can get in that in another episode. But yeah, there were statements made. They just wasn't signed. But yeah, I mean, you have to have eyewitness accounts. They have to be signed testimonies, and the write up is important. I mean, so many awards get kicked back for just grammar. You know what I mean? Like, or
well,
punctuation.
and when it comes to a posthumously awarded one like the Air Force Cross for Cunningham or the Medal of Honor for Chapman, that's their legacy.
Right.
You know, that little paragraph on a page is what they will be known for.
Yeah, that's so good. And the great thing the military does is, um, you get something named after you. You know what I mean? That's how they keep, from not forgetting. They, and
Well,
I had a what's that?
it depends on, the social climate of the time as to whether your name on something gets forgotten or
Right. But in '05, I had a reoccurring dream. Um, I, I mean, it was damn near nightly. A place back home in Martins Ferry, a field, Fodor Field, right downtown. I played little league there, um, and they have a concession stand. And at the end of, the one end of the concession stand was the latrines. And so this reoccurring dream I had was, I died in Iraq, and Martins Ferry named the latrines in my honor. So they were the Sergeant First Class Steve Vickers Memorial Shitters. And I'm telling you, nothing puts you nothing puts you at a high state of readiness like dreaming about them naming shitters at you.
not. The Vicar Shitters.
Yeah, the Vicker shitters in your hometown. But yeah, I mean, um,
You would have been number one and number two.
so lastly, uh, for the Iraq um, conflict, we have Corporal Jason L. Dunham. Corporal Dunham uh, was a squad leader, rifle squad leader in 4th Platoon, Company K, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, Regimental Combat Team 7, 1st Marine Division. His actions were on April 14th, 2004. And
Early.
Huh?
Early in Iraq.
Early in Iraq. And he was born November 10th, 1981 in New York, SIO, um, and died April 22nd, 2004. Or excuse me, yeah. Died April 27th, 2004. which
23.
Yeah, so he died basically 9 days after the incident. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to you ask, young men and women to do the nation's bidding, and and then when they do, it's hard to fathom life just taken. Um, so yeah, Corporal Dunham, serving as a rifle squad leader in 4th Platoon, Company K, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division, was conducting a reconnaissance mission in the town of Karbala when they were when they heard rocket-propelled grenades and small arms fire erupt approximately 2 kilometers to the west. Corporal Dunham led a combined anti-armor team towards the engagement to provide fire support for their battalion commander's convoy, which had been ambushed as it was traveling. Corporal Dunham and his Marines advanced quickly and began to receive enemy fire. Corporal Dunham ordered his squad to dismount their vehicles and led one of his 5 fire teams to the front several blocks, on foot several blocks, south to the ambush convoy. Discovering 7 Iraqi vehicles in a column attempting to depart, Corporal Dunham and his team stopped the vehicles and searched them for weapons. As they approached the vehicles, an insurgent leaped out and attacked Corporal Dunham. Corporal Dunham wrestled the insurgent to the ground. In his ensuing struggle, saw the insurgent release a grenade. Corporal Dunham immediately alerted his fellow Marines to the threat. Aware of the imminent danger, and without hesitation, Corporal Dunham covered the grenade with his helmet and body, bearing the brunt of the explosion and shielding his Marines from the blast, and ultimately, and selfishly act bravely, which was mortally wounded from these acts. So, you know, um, there's in my research uh, on who we were, who we were going to choose, or I was going to choose. Um, I had again some personal um, connections. Paul Smith was a engineer with the Third ID in '03. Held off, 100 attacking Iraqis with a 50 cal machine gun. Personal, like people, he was in one of my former battalions. Both of us being engineers. Sergeant Cash that we spoke about last year. He just received his Medal of Honor last year. Pulling pulling members of his squad out of a burning Bradley while he himself was on fire. Um, it's that measure. We all think if we were put in that position, we would do the same thing. You know what I mean? Like
We hope we would.
we hope we would. Like many of us think, oh yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? But you don't know until you're thrust into situations like that. We spoke in our first episode about Ty Carter that many didn't expect him to step forward when bullets were flying, and on the day he was, on the day that his actions were worthy enough for the Medal of Honor, he did.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, and like I said in that episode, I've had the privilege of meeting several living Medal of Honor recipients. There's 61 of them. There's 61 living Medal of Honor recipients, and they're some of the most humble people that you'll ever meet. It's not for many of them. It's not a me award. For many of them, is I wish I did more. Like I was only doing my job. I was so all the things that we have talked about in previous episodes of survivor guilt and things of that nature, they have. And yes, there's a lot of good stuff that comes with being a recipient of this medal. No one ever wins the Medal of Honor. You know what I mean? Like,
you earn it.
Yeah, you receive it. And it's unlike any other military recognition.
And the majority of guys that are awarded it, it's posthumously.
Well, like I said, over 3,000 have been awarded, and there's only 61 still living, and many of those, like you said, is they were awarded after the fact. And again, it's a testament to for someone to receive something after they perished, for someone to receive something 12 years later. You know what I mean? It takes a new leadership to come in and be like, the Secretary of the Air Force is like, okay, why is the Air Force only have 16 Medal of Honor recipients? Don't we have airmen out there doing Medal of Honor shit? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's look into it. Like, and
that's how that came about.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Even if her motivation is like, I want more Medal of Honors, you know what I mean? But that ain't how that happens.
Right.
It's like, well, our airmen have to be doing things that's worthy, and we're shortchanging them.
She requested that all Air Force crosses be reevaluated for the Medal of Honor.
Exactly. And and by John Chapman getting a Medal of Honor, you're not taking, there was another recipient of the Medal of Honor for Tucker Gar. So, you're not taking freaking ant moving. You're not taken away from someone. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, if
you can have more than one hero in one battle.
Yeah.
I.e. Ty Carter and
Clint Robichaud.
There you go.
Yep. I met him as well. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It needs to be looked at, and people need to take heroism seriously. And I'll tell you what, John Chapman wasn't laying in a trench on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan saying, "This will do it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, No, you know what I mean?
He was laying in a trench on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan saying, "You are not going to take out another helicopter, guys.
Yeah, yeah. No more today.
Not today, Sam."
And you know, this young squad leader that his battalion commander comes under attack, and he's like, I have the means to help, and you know, move on foot or move in a convoy and then dismount and say, I still have the means to get there on foot. And then while dismounted, you confront. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. Like, nowhere tests your leadership ability than in combat. And I'll say this, like, when I mean ability, when you make a decision, the consequences of said decision are known immediately. Like in '05, I come over the radio and said, "Hey, we're gonna bang a left at the Golden Lady." Roger. And then we bang that left, and an IED goes off. That's my decision. If something happened there, that's the consequences of my decision making. You know, and I mean, the tallies get checked quickly in combat. It's and you don't get that in training. You don't um, you don't get that in training.
The foundation's laid in training, but you need the instantaneous feedback of combat.
Yeah, and I was told one time by an observer controller at the National Training Center. Um, he's like, would you do that in combat? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Never been to combat. I said, but I did what I did because I thought it was the right thing to do. He's like, yeah, but I don't know if you would have did that in combat. I'm like, well, I won't know until I get there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think I ran out there and grabbed that dude by his goddamn LBE because no one's really shooting at me. I think I did it because all the training that I had from day one of being in the Army is I'm not leaving a fallen comrade. And if I have the means to pull him off the battlefield, I'm going to. Um, and then, I find myself in Iraq, vehicle gets hit. I find myself climbing up on top of a vehicle so yeah, I will do that dumb shit. And not because, not despite some observer controller, but because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. So, I mean,
If you base your decisions on the right thing to do, odds are it's going to be a good decision.
yeah, but you're also, you know, these guys right here, I don't think there was a lot of thinking involved, and that's not a slight.
No,
You know what I'm saying?
it was instinct
It
and
was
reaction.
it was a lot of their body just doing. You know what I mean?
Subconscious commands, because
Right.
that's the type of man they were.
Yeah, like when Lieutenant Fox says, "Keep coming," you know what I mean? Like you you have there's some of that tape of um in indestructible. Everybody has that a little bit. You know what I mean? Every war fighter has that. They know. They know what I'm talking about.
It's not like when the commander came back and said no because it's too close. He went, okay, let me do the math again. All right, let's not come in that close. He was like, I don't give a shit.
Right.
It's where you're putting it,
Yeah.
because that's where it needs to be.
And yeah,
Warheads on foreheads.
and the term, I mean, the danger close is a thing because of, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so 300 meters, inside of 300 meters is danger close today. And, people will shut off, they'll shut off fires inside of 300 meters. And they called in up on Tucker Carter. They called in danger close rounds. So yeah, I mean it's one of those things where
Are there chances for fratricide and danger close?
yeah,
Of course.
yeah,
But sometimes, um, we were soldiers. The enemy was mixed in with them.
yeah,
So, that platoon that was out there, danger close for them was, I mean, it was right on top of them. Like, you got to drop them here because that's where the enemy is. So it's to have the, like you were saying with the leadership, the to have it in you to be able to make that decision to do something like Lieutenant Fox calling in that airstrike, or Major Sebille, hey, I'm not making it, but neither is he. To have that in your fabric of who you are, and then you do that again, not thinking this is going to get me the Medal of Honor, but I'll be dead, so I won't get any of the cool benefits that come along with it. You know what I mean? It's
right,
it's not about it. Those are the men that it's not about what award can I get, how can I make my career look better, or any of that stuff.
yeah,
It's this is who I am as a man. This is how I was trained to be as a warfighter. This is the type of leader that I am. And when I took that oath, sacrifice, like my my well-being is not more important than anybody else's.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so it's important on Memorial Day um, to take a moment. You know what I mean? Just take a moment. There are all these sales that's going to go on, and there's all these, you know, it's the first weekend, pools are open, and people are going to go to the beach, and school's out, and all this stuff.
It's a national holiday, but take a moment to remember why it's a national
Take a
holiday.
moment, and especially now that the degree of separation from today's civilian population and a veteran who has gave their life for this country is not too great. I mean, it's not too far of a distance.
There's
So
um there's a reason why we have this logo for our podcast.
yeah,
And there's a reason why I have it as a tattoo on my forearm where it says all gave some gave all.
yeah. I mean, it's without them. I mean, do we have what we have today? You know what I mean? And if freedom wasn't free, what would you pay? What would you pay for your freedom?
We know what these guys will pay.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, um so just take a moment. And are we saying don't go cook out? Are we saying don't enjoy a cold beverage? Don't enjoy, Memorial Day? No, we're not saying that. Do those things because so many have come before you, afford you that opportunity for you to spend time with your family.
And they can't
And
because
they
of the
can't.
price they paid.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But before you start your cookout, take a moment, just a moment of silence. Maybe, depending on your faith beliefs, say a prayer, um, because guys like this
yeah,
are the reason why you can fire up that grill on Monday, go to the pool on Monday, be able to have that, big discount sale on something you want to buy on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't need a special day to remember those friends of mine who have gave their all. And you know, throughout the year I remember all of them. Normally it's, you know, on the day of their passing. Or when I get I'll get a little memory thing of, it's been 12 years since this or whatever. And I'm like, you know, and it's a shame that when we go to war on terrorism memorials, that it takes me 40, 45 minutes to shade people's names off a wall. And uh, it's not a shame that it takes so long. It's a shame that I know so many people. That's where the shame is. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I don't. Hell, I don't mind if it takes an hour. You know what I mean? Like whatever.
The time's not what matters.
No,
It's the fact that you have to do so many.
you have to do so many, um, but I have to do so many. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I have to. It's just another chance to remember.
that's it. It's another chance for you to prove that they're not forgotten.
Right. And we mentioned down at Fort Stewart in Georgia, um, they have the Warrior Walk where they planted a tree for every member of the 3rd Infantry Division that died during OIF, OEF since '03. And, it's amazing. Um, it's hollowed ground. And yeah, it's just a tree. It's just a piece of stone with their name on it and a flag of what brigade they were in. And, you know, but again, it's their unit not forgetting.
Right. It enables those that come after them to understand and remember the way that was paved for them.
Right. Man, I find myself, a lot just thinking that when I don't want to do things, I still need to do things because I have the ability. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And and that's it's a good place to be. Um, it's a good place to be. So just take reverence that, even if you don't know their name. I mean, um, we 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 a report came out that you know um, that remains were coming home in Detroit, which is 200 miles away from us. Uh, there was no name of the soldier. It was just been missing for 80 years, coming home, and we were like, yep, we're going. So it like
Even if it would have been missing 8 years, we're still
right,
going.
right. I mean, yeah,
But again, we're afforded that opportunity to be able to do that.
yeah, and I mean, we're afforded that opportunity. One that we're retired for the things we have done, and also now that we have time, we give back. and we remember those that have gave a lot more than we have.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean
And we
it's
represent those in our group that don't have the ability to go do that through work or what have you.
right. And yeah, it's no, it's no slight on people, um, but it is good for my soul. And um that's that's all that's all I'm after now. Things that are good for my soul. Um and because things that are good for your soul keep you in a good spot. If you're doing things for the right reasons, it keeps you in a good spot, and that's where the healing comes from. Uh and so that's why I keep doing that.
So this Memorial Day, remember all of those who fell before.
Yeah.
Also, these 6 men, keep that in your mind as well. Um, know that we try to do what we can do to make sure that they're honored and not forgotten. We hope you do the same. Um,
Yeah, and get out and enjoy. We're going to do what we love on Monday. So we would be hypocrites
yeah,
if we say don't do what you
celebrate your freedom.
celebrate. You know what I mean? The best way to honor those who gave their last measure to ensure your freedom is for you to go out and enjoy said freedom
Yep. So their sacrifice wasn't in vain.
in vain. Ah, no, but just take a moment, right? And know the reason for the season. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And and just say thank you, and and then be on about your day.
Yep.
I mean, you know,
Can't say it any more simply than that.
there it is. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.